Sebastian Buemi is an interesting figure in modern motorsports. Although his F1 career was objectively terrible, he had a career rebound of sorts in recent times. A big part of this career resurgence would come from the Formula E series, where he became a champion in the second year of the series' existence. However, Buemi could have been a two-time champion in the series, but it never came to be. This is a story of Sebastian Buemi's 2016-17 Formula E season, the one that got away. Entering the third season of the Formula E series, there were many changes. The front nose of the cars were updated, new venues would join the series including races in Hong Kong, Marrakesh, Vancouver, and New York City. However, the biggest story would come from Jaguar's return to open-wheel racing after leaving Formula 1 in 2004. With the background information of the season out of the way, we can get to the start of the season at Hong Kong. Despite qualifying 5th for the inaugural race on the tight and technical Chinese street circuit, Sebastian Buemi would still have a chance to win, being only 2/10 off pole sitter Nelson Piquet Jr. When the race got started, it was calamitous to say the very least. Lucas di Grassi, Nelson Piquet Jr., and rookie Felix Rosenqvist all had issues throughout the race. This would allow Buemi to make his way through the field and score his first win of the Formula E season. This win would be followed up with another 2 wins to kick off the year, one at the first ever E-Prix in Marrakesh and the other coming at Buenos Aires. Leaving the Buenos Aires E-Prix, Sebastian Buemi was a leader in the points standings. He was nearly 30 points ahead of Lucas di Grassi. Even with the poor finish at the Mexican E-Prix, Buemi still led the points, but his gap was reduced significantly that weekend. Monaco would be the next race of the season, and Buemi used this weekend to his advantage. Buemi would get the pole and lead every lap on his way to his 4th win of the season and the 10th of his Formula E career. Sebastian would also win at Paris, but at this point the road became bumpier for him. Entering the second half of the season, Buemi led the championship by 43 points. All he needed to do was just hold on for the doubleheaders in Berlin, New York, and Vancouver. It's at this point in the season where a big issue arose. Sebastian Buemi was not only racing in Formula E at this time, but he was also racing for Toyota in the World Endurance Championship. Due to contractual obligations with Toyota, he needed to race in every World Endurance Championship event. For the weekend of July 16th, 2017, Buemi needed to race for Toyota at the Nürburgring in Germany. But what about the E-Prix in New York? Buemi held a big championship lead, but with this complication, he needed a very good weekend in Berlin. Race number 1 would have seen Sebastian Buemi finish 5th, however, after the race, it was found that his tires were below the mandated minimum tire pressures, and he was promptly disqualified from that race. Anuses began to clench at this point. The most points a driver could get in a Formula E weekend was 29, but since this was a doubleheader, Sebastian Buemi could lose 58 points just like that. With the disqualification, it was imperative that Buemi get as many points as possible in the second race, something that Buemi achieved. Although he had gotten his 6th win of the season, Lucas di Grassi was still mathematically able to grab the lead after Buemi's off weekend in New York. Fortunately for Buemi, Lucas di Grassi struggled in New York, with di Grassi only closing in by 22 points. 2 drivers, 2 teams, 2 races, 1 weekend. 10 points separating the two. That was the state of affairs when the series approached the last race of the season. For Buemi, all he needed was a clean weekend and most likely another win. For Lucas di Grassi, he needed 2 things: a fast Audi and an unlucky Buemi.
Down in total on his teammates, and he's in the wall! Sebastian Buemi, championship leader, out of the second free practice session. That's a big one for Buemi.
This can't be happening. This is a total disaster. After this crash, Buemi needed a new battery, giving him a 10th place grid penalty for race number 1. It's alright though, all Seb had to do was avoid a first lap crash, try and beat di Grassi, and keep his head cool. These were all things that Buemi didn't do. He picked up suspension damage on this lap 1 scuffle, then as the full course yellow came out, he hit the back of Daniel Abt and got a bit upset with the Audi driver. They then came into the pits to change cars, with Buemi bumping into Abt the whole way down the pits like some an indoor go-kart track. Buemi got out ahead of Abt and celebrated by brake-checking Abt on the pit exit and having a hissy fit on the radio. When the checkered flag flew on race number 1, Lucas di Grassi had won not only the race, but had taken the championship lead from Buemi. After the race as championship rival won, Buemi essentially had a temper tantrum in the pits.
Why you dive like this, man? You broke my steering, man. Turn 2, Who went on the inside? You or him? I'm sure it's him.
When?
Turn 2 at the start.
Yeah, it was me.
You went on the inside. You touched me. You broke my steering. You dive in like you.
What should I do? Hit you from behind or what?
No, you just.
Even throughout the whole race, Buemi was being a total jackass. Although Buemi had lost the championship lead, he was only down 3 points. For a few hours. After post-race scrutineering, Buemi's car was found to be underweight. He was promptly disqualified from the race and left with little to no hope of winning his second Formula E championship. Buemi was 18 points down and needed a miracle to even have a chance at winning the championship. Unfortunately for him, that miracle never came. Lucas di Grassi would win the Formula E championship in Season 3, beating Buemi by 24 points. This late season collapse is unlike any that we'll ever discuss in this series. There is nobody other than Buemi and Renault Edams that can be blamed for this. His team let him down with illegal cars, and Buemi let the team down with the whole Vancouver weekend. Buemi was over-aggressive at the worst point possible, and he acted like a child when things didn't go his way. He even went out of his way to throw dirt on Robin Freins, Antonio Felix da Costa, Daniel Abt, and Audi as a whole during his post-race interviews. His outburst was so bad and childish that 10 days later, he needed to apologize to all of them on Twitter. Buemi's outburst was very similar to Denny Hamlin's outburst towards Alex Bowman after the fall Martinsville race in NASCAR in 2021. But unlike Buemi, Denny Hamlin could actually fight for the championship. For Sebastian Buemi, this would be the last of his championship fighting seasons, as since 2017, he's only won one more race, with that being a single win coming in 2019. In the 2020-2021 Formula E season, Sebastian Buemi and his rebranded Nissan Edams team had their worst seasons to date. The team had 5 disqualifications throughout the year and finished a miserable 7th in the team's championship. Buemi also finished 20th in the driver's points this year, a far cry from their championship fighting years just a few years before. Buemi still found success in Formula E, but despite this, the 2016-17 Formula E season will always be remembered as Sebastian Buemi's championship that got away.